For years, fans of Michael Landon have wondered if the rumors were true. Whispers of a secret cabin tucked away deep in the woods, built by the TV legend himself. But no one had ever seen it, until now. What was inside left even longtime fans stunned, and revealed a side of Landon few ever knew. Join us as we uncover the long-lost cabin of Michael Landon and explore what was really hidden inside. A traumatic growing up. Michael Landon was born on October 31, 1936 in Forest Hills, Queens, New York. At birth, he was named Eugene Maurice Orowitz, a name that reflected his family's mixed heritage. His father was a Jewish-American actor, and his mother was an Irish Catholic dancer. This cultural and religious difference created serious tension at home. The two parents fought constantly, and most of their arguments were about religion. Their marriage was not peaceful, and young Eugene grew up in a house filled with stress. Eugene had one sibling, an older sister named Evelyn, who was born in 1933. They weren't far apart in age, but Eugene's experiences at home and outside made him feel alone very early in life. In 1941, when Eugene was just 4 years old, the family left New York and moved to Collingswood, New Jersey. It was a small, quiet town, and it would go on to shape much of Eugene's childhood. But it didn't offer the safety or happiness his parents were hoping for. Eugene had a genius-level IQ, something that might have made people think school would be easy for him, but it wasn't. In fact, school was extremely hard. His intelligence didn't help him fit in. Instead, he was bullied by classmates and misunderstood by his teachers. He often felt like no one knew how to deal with him or even wanted to try. The town itself made things worse. Collingswood was deeply anti-Semitic, and because of his father's Jewish background, Eugene often felt like an outsider. A painful example of this came every Wednesday. While the Christian children went to church classes, Eugene had to stay behind at school. There were no other kids with him. He spent those afternoons cleaning blackboards alone, feeling rejected and different. He didn't understand why he had to be separated. That feeling of being left out stuck with him for the rest of his life. These early years were filled with confusion, sadness, and emotional isolation. Eugene wasn't just dealing with problems at school or in town. The most painful struggles were waiting for him at home. Life inside the Orowitz home was deeply unstable. Eugene's mother suffered from severe mental illness. Her emotional state was unpredictable and terrifying. She often had violent mood swings and even attempted to end her life multiple times during Eugene's childhood. One of the most haunting memories from his early life happened during a family trip to the beach. Eugene was still just a boy when his mother walked into the ocean, fully intending to drown herself. Eugene ran after her, shouting and begging her to come back. But she didn't listen. The waves hit his small chest as he tried to save her. In his desperation, he finally hit her in the face to force her to turn around. It worked. She walked back like nothing had happened. But for Eugene, the damage was deep. Afterward, he vomited from fear and stress. That day stayed with him forever. He would later call it the worst day of his life. Along with emotional trauma, Eugene also faced physical and public humiliation. He suffered from a medical condition that caused bedwetting. This was something beyond his control. But instead of showing him love or patience, his mother believed it was caused by laziness. She didn't accept that it was a health issue, so she punished him harshly. Her punishments were cruel and designed to embarrass him. Every time he wet the bed, she would take his wet bed sheets and hang them out the window, right where the school bus stopped. This meant that all the kids on the bus could see his private shame every morning. It became a daily source of humiliation. Things got worse when his mother decided to test him. She once sent him to a sleepover with the hidden intention of proving that he didn't really have a medical condition. If he wet the bed, he'd face further punishment. If he didn't, she'd accuse him of faking the condition all along. It was a no-win situation. No matter what happened, Eugene was blamed. He was either a liar or a failure in his mother's eyes. This toxic environment at home, mixed with the bullying and rejection he faced outside, created a deep sense of fear, shame, and isolation. He never felt truly safe. Not at school, not in town, and definitely not in his own house. As a young boy, he carried emotional burdens far heavier than most adults will ever face. Even in the face of all this pain, Eugene would eventually find a way to push forward. But his childhood scars would never fully fade. The rejection, trauma, and cruelty he experienced shaped the man he would become, both in the roles he played and the stories he chose to tell. Next up, how sports became Eugene's first escape and how a single throw changed his life forever. Shattered Olympic dreams. For Eugene Maurice Orowitz, sports became a way to escape the pain of his home life. In high school, he discovered javelin throwing, a sport that allowed him to focus his energy and find something he was truly good at. In 1954, when Eugene was a senior at Collingswood High School, he made headlines. He threw the javelin 193 feet 4 inches, the longest throw by any high school athlete in the United States that year. It was a huge moment. Reporters wrote about him. College scouts started paying attention, and Eugene began to dream big. In 1955, he went even further, literally. That year, he broke the national high school record, throwing the javelin 211 feet 7 inches. It was one of the best throws ever recorded at that level. His name was suddenly known in track and field circles, and he looked like a future Olympic star. He was proud of his success. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged somewhere. His performance earned him a scholarship to the University of Southern California, one of the top schools for athletics in the country. Going to USC meant being trained by the best coaches, surrounded by top athletes, and preparing for a chance at the Olympics. Eugene was excited. He believed he could one day represent the United States on the world stage. But something unexpected and cruel would take it all away. Eugene had a personal belief that his long hair gave him strength, similar to the biblical story of Samson. Whether it was true or not, it gave him confidence. His teammates, not taking it seriously, decided to pull a prank. They gave him a crew cut, thinking it was funny. But Eugene didn't laugh. After that haircut, his throws dropped by nearly 50 feet. He felt weak and unsure of himself. Trying too hard to make up for the loss in distance, he began overtraining. This led to a serious injury. He tore ligaments in his shoulder. It was the end of his athletic career. The dream of the injury, Pix, was gone. Next, find out how Eugene turned heartbreak into a brand new beginning, one that would make him a star. Break into acting and name change. After losing his dream of becoming an Olympic athlete, Eugene Maurice Orowitz had to start over. He moved to Los Angeles and took on a series of odd jobs just to survive. One day, while working at one of these jobs, a strange twist of fate changed everything. A co-worker at a warehouse asked Eugene to help rehearse lines for an acting audition. Eugene didn't think much of it. He was just helping out. But once they started reading the script, people noticed something surprising. Eugene had a natural talent for acting. He delivered the lines better than the person who was actually auditioning. Someone nearby told him to try out for this. That casual moment opened the door to a new path. Eugene decided to give acting a real shot, but there was a problem. His name. Eugene Maurice Orowitz didn't sound like a Hollywood name. At the time, casting directors often rejected names that sounded too ethnic, and especially names that sounded Jewish. Agents told him he needed something shorter, easier to remember, and more marketable. So Eugene grabbed a phone book and started flipping through it, looking for inspiration. He first found the name Michael Landon, but when he checked, it was already taken by another actor. So, just a few names down, He saw Michael Landon. It had a good ring to it, simple, strong, and unique. That became his new identity. Just 4 months later, he landed his first television role on a show called Telephone Time. It was a small part, but it marked the start of his acting career. For someone with no formal training and no connections in the industry, it was an incredible beginning. After a few small TV appearances, Michael Landon got his first major break in a movie that would become a surprise hit. In 1957, he starred in I Was a Teenage Werewolf, playing a troubled teenager who turns into a werewolf. It was one of the first horror films to explore the idea of a young person transforming into a monster. The story connected with teen audiences, especially those who felt misunderstood or angry. The movie was made on a tight budget, just $123,000, but it ended up earning nearly $2 million at the box office. That was a huge success at the time, and it made Landon a rising star. Bonanza and Stardom. Michael Landon's rise to stardom truly began in 1959 when he was cast as Little Joe Cartwright in Bonanza. At first, the show had a different working title, The Restless Gun. It was eventually renamed Bonanza, and it would go on to become one of the most iconic shows in American television history. Landon played the youngest son of Ben Cartwright, a strong-willed and wealthy rancher living in Nevada. His character, Little Joe, was charming, emotional, and impulsive, traits that helped him connect with viewers of all ages. Audiences fell in love with him almost instantly. Bonanza made history as the first Western TV series to be filmed entirely in color. This was a bold move by NBC. At the time, color television sets were still very expensive and not common in most households. The series premiered on September 12, 1959, and each episode cost between $100,000 and $150,000 to produce, which would be close to $1 million per episode today. This was a huge investment, but it quickly paid off. At first, ratings were not very strong. During its first year, Bonanza didn't even rank in the top 30 shows, but by the second season, it had broken into the top 20. By the third season, it had reached the number 2 spot in the national ratings. The real turning point came during season 6, when the show hit number 1, earning a 36.3 Nielsen rating and drawing about 19 million viewers every week. By the early 1970s, the cast of Bonanza felt like a family. They had worked together for over a decade and shared laughter, challenges, and personal milestones. But in 1972, tragedy struck when Dan Blocker, who played the lovable and big-hearted Hoss Cartwright, died suddenly at the age of 43. Blocker had undergone routine gallbladder surgery, but unexpected complications led to a pulmonary embolism, and he passed away. The news devastated the cast and crew. Michael Landon and Lorne Greene were especially close to Blocker. They were heartbroken and struggled to accept that their friend and co-star was gone. Another major blow came from behind the scenes. NBC made a programming decision that would prove disastrous. The network moved Bonanza from its longtime Sunday night slot to Tuesday nights. Sunday had become a tradition for many fans. Families would gather after dinner to watch the show together. The switch to Tuesdays disrupted that routine. The ratings plummeted almost immediately. The show fell from number 4 to number 52 in just a matter of weeks. NBC executives were shocked by how fast the decline happened. They decided to cancel the series without warning. The final episode of Bonanza aired on January 16, 1973. It ended not with a big send-off or special farewell, but quietly, without the closure many fans hoped for. Little House on the Prairie. After Bonanza ended in 1973, Michael Landon was eager to create something new. He had just spent 14 years playing Little Joe Cartwright, and now he wanted to tell a different kind of story, one that was more focused on family, love, and real-life struggles. So he brought an idea to NBC, a TV show based on the Little House on the Prairie books by Laura Ingalls Wilder. At first, NBC wasn't excited. Network executives were skeptical. A period family drama set in the 1800s didn't seem like a good fit for the changing television landscape of the 1970s. Audiences were starting to prefer more modern and edgy shows. NBC worried Little House on the Prairie would be too slow, too gentle, and not exciting enough to keep viewers interested. But Landon believed in the project. He was inspired by his young daughter, who loved the Little House books, and by his wife, who also enjoyed them. He saw potential in the story of the Ingalls family and thought it could connect with audiences in a deep and emotional way. So he pushed forward. NBC agreed to let him film a pilot movie, which aired in March 1974. It was well received, with strong ratings and positive feedback from viewers. Encouraged by this success, NBC gave the green light for a full series. Little House on the Prairie officially launched as a weekly show on September 11, 1974. Little House on the Prairie ran for 9 seasons and became one of the most beloved family dramas in American TV history. It showed real struggles, poverty, illness, loss, and love in a way that felt honest and heartfelt. Landon made sure that every episode had meaning, something the whole family could watch together. Affairs and turmoil on set. While Little House on the Prairie looked like a warm, loving show on screen, things behind the scenes weren't always so pleasant. As the years went on, conflicts started to build, especially between Michael Landon and some of the cast. One of the most serious tensions came from his relationship with Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Ingalls, also known as Ma. In 1975, during the second season of the show, Grassel asked for a raise. At the time, she was working long hours, memorizing lines, and helping bring one of TV's most beloved mothers to life. But her request was denied. According to Grassel, she was told that her character wasn't popular enough to deserve more pay. Even worse, she claimed she was being paid the same as the child actors, despite being one of the adult leads of the show. After she pushed back, Grassel says things started to change in a noticeable way. Her screen time began to drop, and she was given fewer important storylines. This also affected her residuals, the payments actors receive when shows are replayed or sold. As her character faded from focus, so did her earnings. She later said she felt punished for standing up for herself. But pay wasn't the only issue. Karen Grassel later opened up about what she described as a toxic environment on set. She recalled that Michael Landon often made inappropriate, graphic jokes during rehearsals. At first, she tried to ignore them, but over time, they wore her down. She felt uncomfortable and disrespected. It created an unprofessional and tense atmosphere, especially for a family show that was supposed to represent kindness and values. There was also the matter of Michael Landon's personal life, which started to bleed into his work. He began having an affair with Cindy Clerico, a much younger woman who worked as a makeup artist on the show. Clerico was in her 20s, while Landon was married and in his 40s. Their relationship became well known on set. Landon did not keep it private. In fact, he reportedly bragged about his revived libido around others. He would make suggestive comments and even gave out copies of a book written by Cindy to others on the crew. These actions added to the uncomfortable environment, especially for female cast members. As the affair continued, Grassel's role continued to shrink. She said she felt humiliated, not just by how she was treated professionally, but also by how the atmosphere on set had changed. What had once been a supportive team now felt divided. Others on the show started to confirm what Grassel had experienced. Several co-stars later spoke out and said the working environment had indeed become toxic. Some crew members said they felt caught in the middle or pressured to stay silent. A scandalous personal life. Michael Landon was known to millions as a loving father on screen, but his personal life was often more complicated and filled with pain, betrayal, and public scandal. Over the years, he was married 3 times and had a total of 9 children, including several adopted ones. While he clearly loved his kids, some of his choices deeply affected his family and hurt the people who loved him most. In 1956, when Landon was still using his birth name, Eugene Orowitz, and working odd jobs, he married Dodie Levy Fraser. Dodie was a legal secretary, and together they adopted 2 sons, Mark and Josh. At that point, Landon was still struggling to break into Hollywood. The marriage lasted for several years, but as his fame began to grow, the relationship changed. Eventually, they divorced in 1962, shortly before Landon became a household name thanks to Bonanza. The following year, in 1963, Landon married his second wife, Lynn Noe. Lynn had a daughter from a previous relationship named Cheryl, whom Landon adopted and raised as his own. Together, Lynn and Michael had 4 more children: Leslie, Michael Jr., Shauna, and Christopher. For a long time, they were seen as the perfect family. Their home life looked stable, and Landon's wholesome public image seemed to match the loving father and husband he played on TV. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. By the early 1980s, Landon had begun an affair with Cindy Clerico, a young makeup artist who worked with him on Little House on the Prairie. The age difference between them was significant. Landon was in his mid-40s and Cindy was in her 20s. The relationship wasn't just private, it soon became public, and it caused a massive scandal. The affair destroyed his marriage to Lynn Noe, and the fallout was ugly. Lynn was devastated. According to some reports, during a fight, she threw a bottle at him. People around them described the divorce as bitter and painful. But it wasn't just a private issue. Fans turned against Landon, who had built his career on being a model family man. The backlash was strong. In fact, Kodak, one of the show's big sponsors, pulled their advertising from Little House on the Prairie because of the scandal. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Ingalls and was like a daughter to Landon, was especially hurt. She said the affair and divorce shattered her trust in him. Gilbert had grown up on set and saw Landon as a real father figure. When his personal life fell apart, she felt caught between her loyalty to him and her disappointment. For years, it affected her emotionally. Landon's real-life daughter, Cheryl, who he had adopted from Lynn, also took the betrayal personally. After being badly injured in a car accident as a teenager, Cheryl said Landon had been a devoted father, by her side through her recovery. That made his later actions even harder to understand. She reportedly felt abandoned and heartbroken by how easily he seemed to walk away from their family. Landon married Cindy Clerico in 1983, shortly after his divorce was finalized. Together, they had 2 children, Jennifer and Sean. Despite the storm it caused, Landon tried to move forward and rebuild his life with Cindy and their kids. They stayed together until his death, and by most accounts, Landon loved his children from all his marriages deeply. Still, the pain from the divorce lingered. Years later, Landon's son, Michael Landon Jr., made a film called The Father I Knew. It was based on his real experiences growing up with Landon, loving his father deeply, but also feeling the deep hurt that came from his father's betrayal and the breakdown of their family, final years, and death. In April 1991, Michael Landon received news that changed everything. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, one of the most aggressive and deadly forms of cancer. At just 54 years old, he faced a battle he knew would be difficult and possibly short. But in true Landon fashion, he chose to face it head-on, with honesty, courage, and a desire to control the narrative himself. Rather than hide his illness from the public, Landon took a bold step. In May 1991, he appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. During the interview, He talked openly about his diagnosis. He joked, smiled, and even lightened the mood at times, but he didn't downplay the seriousness of his condition. He wanted his fans to hear the truth directly from him, not through rumors or tabloid headlines. Shortly after, he held a press conference at his home in Malibu. He invited journalists and reporters into his private world. Surrounded by loved ones, he answered questions about his health, his family, and his hopes. His goal was simple. He didn't want pity. He wanted people to understand that he was still fighting, still full of life, and still proud of the work he had done. In those final months, Landon's Malibu home became a place of love and gathering. All 9 of his children, from all 3 marriages, came to visit him. Some stayed for extended periods. Others came and went. But one thing was clear: Landon was surrounded by family. No matter what had happened in the past, his children came together during this difficult time. As the weeks passed, Landon's health declined. By late June, it became clear the end was near. On July 1, 1991, Michael Landon passed away peacefully at home, just 3 months after his diagnosis. He was 54 years old. According to family members, his last words were a quiet request to his children, asking for a moment alone with his wife, Cindy Clerico. It was a final, private goodbye between husband and wife. Landon's funeral was held soon after. More than 500 people attended, including family, friends, former co-stars, and fans. The service was emotional and full of heartfelt tributes. People spoke of his talent, his work ethic, his humor, and his deep love for his children. Michael Landon was buried at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, California. His final resting place is next to his adopted son, Mark, who had passed away years earlier. It was a quiet, respectful burial for a man who had lived such a public life. The Malibu House. After Michael Landon's death in 1991, one part of his life seemed to stand still: his 7-bedroom Malibu mansion. This large and beautiful house, once filled with family and energy, became known in the neighborhood for its silence and slow decay. Even though Landon had passed, the house remained, seemingly frozen in time. Locals began to refer to it as Michael Landon's abandoned house. People would drive by and notice how the once proud mansion had started to change. The wood siding was peeling, the windows were covered with vines, and the once well-kept yard had become overgrown. Some even took photos and shared them online. The images painted a picture of a grand house left behind, slowly being taken back by nature. What many people didn't realize, though, is that the house wasn't exactly abandoned. In fact, Landon had sold the home in 1989, 2 years before his death. The buyer paid $6 million, which would be around $11 million in today's money. But even though the house had a new owner, it remained untouched for years. The owner didn't live in it or renovate it. They simply let it sit. As time went on, rumors grew, and the house's quiet presence added to the mystery surrounding Landon's life and death. Then, after sitting for over 2 decades, things changed. The house finally got the attention it needed. It was fully renovated and modernized. Builders restored the old features and updated it with new ones. The once silent home came back to life, now a blend of its original charm and modern luxury. In 2014, the house sold again, this time for a stunning $40 million. What had once been seen as a sad and forgotten place became a major real estate success. The property had gone from being a quiet, vine-covered shell to one of the most valuable homes in Malibu. It was a silent relic turned gold mine. Even though Michael Landon hadn't lived there for years before he died, the house remained tied to his name. Fans and neighbors still saw it as his, and its story became part of his larger legacy, a symbol of fame, time, and how memories can linger long after someone is gone. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Michael Landon's life, Don't forget to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next story.